in conjunction with Supplier Development Programme. We're happy to talk to you today about the Support for Communities Framework Agreement opportunity that is available for you. So we're going to have a brief look at Introduction to High, and then colleagues will talk a little bit more about the actual tender requirements, the tender response, what types of aspects, what documents have we issued, what are we looking back for from yourselves, some information about the scoring methodology that's being used for this tender, and some general information and guidance to help signpost you as well. So Highlands and Islands Enterprise, we're a Scottish Government Economic and Community Development Agency covering the north and west of Scotland. And as you can see from this map, that is a large landmass which covers half of Scotland and is home to more than 440,000 people and 19,000 businesses of different various sizes, from city to rural locations as well, including islands. And within High, our vision is to help to build a prosperous, inclusive and sustainable economy across the Highlands and Islands, attracting more people to choose this area to live, work, study, invest and visit. And we're ambitious for all parts of our region to sustain and develop a vibrant rural economy, and that's based on successful, productive and resilient businesses, strong, capable and resourceful communities, and help to create conditions for growth and a green economy recovery. So those are some of our three principal objectives and priorities. And you can visit our website, we've got the link shown there, and you can find out more about the support that we actually provide to help businesses and communities within the High region. And you can also follow a link to view our current procurement strategy. And in that strategy, it does include some content about the corporate social responsibilities that we seek to achieve through our procurements and supply chain. And some key priorities for us are that transition to net zero Scotland and about community wealth building as well. So the procurement strategy was updated during 2021, and we have the procurement mission statement there, which you can view. But effectively, it's taking the principle of open, transparent procurements processes, and we're obviously looking to demonstrate value for money, but also looking to see how we can incorporate principles of sustainable procurement and obtain community benefits into the region, into the High region as well. So I'll hand over to Lindsay.
Okay, thanks, Sylvia. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of our current framework and then some key points on the new Support for Communities framework opportunity. So the current framework is a pilot which will expire on the 31st of March 2022. The main difference with the framework compared to other high support is it provides practical support to our social enterprises and community clients who lack the capacity to progress an opportunity. It's added value support, and it must not duplicate any other services already available via High or any other public sector supported organisation. And as Sylvia has touched on, as part of High's vision, supporting communities to deliver economic and social impacts, it's key to achieving a prosperous, inclusive and sustainable region. Thanks, Sylvia. The main outputs from the framework are increased capacity of the local communities. It has supported and enabled social enterprises and community organisations to address market failure. It has assisted in the development of income generating assets for our communities, and it has also helped secure substantial additional investment into the Highlands and Islands region. Thanks, Sylvia. The current pilot framework was evaluated last year. The evaluation concluded the positive value of the framework, with the key elements summarised as being practical, hands-on support to our social enterprise and community clients, to being very flexible support, which is moulded to the individual needs of the clients. And the evaluation also described the framework as an enabler, which leads to subsequent projects delivering impacts which would not have occurred without that support. The benefits and outputs will be continued and hopefully enhanced under the new framework. Thanks, Sylvia. So the new framework, so the main differences are this will cover the whole of the region and it will not be split geographically. We're looking to award on a 3+1 year basis. It will be multi-supplier arrangement. We are anticipating between 5 and 7 suppliers, but we reserve the right to appoint more or less. We envisage a majority of requirements will be via direct award, which will be on a rotational basis. Many tender exercises will be used for requirements of £10,000 or more. However, in exceptional circumstances, different processes may be required, but this will be considered on a case-by-case basis. This table it's quite a full slide, but this table breaks down the main types of support available through the framework. So on the left-hand side there, in the left-hand column, examples of the activities or tasks that we might expect under each support type in the middle column. And on the right-hand side, we have the main outputs expected from the support. So just running through the different types of support here, the project management or delivery support, we expect that to cover areas such as delivering or managing a large-scale project for our clients, various marketing activities, or assisting clients to move services online or developing a digital system, for example. The project development is more about the early stage support. So that's be around, could be, for example, community consultation or engagement, looking at various project options or developing strategic or community plans for our clients. It's worth noting here that support with standard business plans is not included under this framework, and that's because there's support available elsewhere. The performance management is about social impact measurement. So it's about assisting our clients to understand social impact, learn how to collect the data, report on their social impacts. This information is useful, for example, in supporting funding applications. And finally, financial and procurement support. Activities and tasks can be around securing investment or developing funding applications or setting up financial management systems for our clients. The procurement element can assist clients with running their own procurement exercises or assist them in participating in procurement exercises as a contractor or a subcontractor. And then on the right hand side there, all the outputs listed, which I think we've touched on some already, but as an example, increased confidence, levering in funds to the region, activity happening more quickly, the availability of expertise or skills to our community clients. So appreciate there's a lot of information in this slide, but hopefully we've gone through and touched on the main points there. So moving on to the delivery and estimated volumes. So accessing the framework support will be through our high staff and in our high area teams. They will identify if the support is available, if the support is required for our clients. It's important to note that the supplier is independent of High, but providing services on High's instruction. We expect the majority of support to be delivered remotely or digitally. However, face-to-face engagement may be required, but we do expect this to be minimal. As an average, we expect the support to be between 5 and 10 days, with a maximum allocation of limited to 20. Again, exceptions may be considered. And we have estimated the number of call-offs in this table here, with project management and delivery and project development expected to be the most, with around 30 to 45 call-offs, and performance management and financial procurement support slightly less. However, please note these are only indicative volumes and they're not a commitment in terms of volume. So the supplier's resources, resources can be in-house or accessed via a network of associates. On some occasions, suppliers may need to source additional expert help out with their core team. However, we do expect this to be minimal. We expect to have quarterly contract management and monitoring meetings. And again, this will be digitally rather than in person. And my final slide here is just covering the skills and experience. So we expect individuals to be experienced in working with the third sector. And again, as Sylvia touched on earlier as well, net zero and fair work are two key principles for High, and they should be considered where appropriate when delivering the services under the framework. We do expect our community clients throughout the Highlands and Islands to be involved in a variety of projects from a wide range of sectors. So we've listed below some sectors as examples. However, there may be additional sectors, but I hope this gives you an idea of the range of what we expect to see. So thanks, Sylvia. I think it's back to you.
It's actually over to myself now, Lindsay. So
Apologies.
it's okay. What I'm going to do is go through a few slides here that will show you what you need to think about when you're putting in your response to High. So the first slide here shows you some of our key dates in the process. These are indicative, but hopefully we should be able to stick to them. At the moment, we've not had anything that would show us anything different. The key dates there are highlighted in red, and these are fixed and would change. So the first one there is about asking questions. So clarifications can be raised at any point up till 12 noon on the 18th. The one point I would like to say to you there is if you've got questions that you want to ask, if you have a number of questions, say 4 or 5, if you could ask these as individual questions, because sometimes what happens is we cannot answer all of them at once, and because they're asked as one question, we have to upload the answer as one question. So if you've got more than one question, break it down, then we'll be able to respond to them quickly, and one won't hold up answering all of your questions. The next key date there is the deadline, so you must meet that deadline, because anything that's received after that deadline can't be accepted. So please make sure that you have these dates in your diary, and that you do actually keep on track of them and not leave everything to the last minute. In terms of the questions, what I should have also said is that we can't see who is asking any questions, the same as we can't see before the deadline who has submitted a submission. So therefore, if you're asking a question and there is no question that's a silly question, better to ask the question and know the answer rather than to make assumptions. Please make sure that you do ask these in advance. Next slide, please, Sylvia. Thank you. The next slide really talks about the single procurement document, which is an online document that you have to fill in yourselves. Divided into 2 sections there. As you can see, the first bit is a bit information only, with the second bit covering exclusion and selection criteria. This is a pass-fail section of your process. So what you need to do is pass these, and anybody that doesn't pass, that will be excluded from the process. You can see the types of questions that are covered there. In terms of the economic and financial standing, which is insurances, which we've listed for you to meet, the insurance for professional indemnity is 1 million, employer's liability is 5 million, and the public liability is 1.5 million, with each of these being each and every claim. The SPD document is key in the process, because if you don't submit that, it will not allow you to submit your submission. So you must make sure that you actually submit that document. And if you've got any issues about how to use it, how to upload it, etc., you should contact PCS, because it's a PCS document, not one that's owned by High. Next slide, please. Those that pass the SPD will then be looked at in terms of the award criteria. You can see there what we have is 40% price, 60% quality, which added together gives us a value for money. The questions that are broken down are shown there. The cybersecurity one is a pass-fail question. Again, if suppliers don't pass this, they would be excluded from the process. This is actually valued externally by our external consultant. 2 other questions I would like to point out are number 3 and 4 that are shown there. As Lindsay already highlighted, the there are core individuals who will be delivering this, but on occasions, which we expect to be minimal, you may need to bring in additional resources. So we have broken down these questions into two aspects. Next slide, please. This list here shows you all the forms that we expect you to send back to us. The reason that we've listed them is that sometimes people miss out a document, so it's helpful for yourselves if you can see the documents that we expect you to send back to us. Please use the forms that we've provided and submit them in the format that we've asked for, and also submit them separately, because these documents are used at different stages in the process, with not all being evaluated by the same individuals. So that's why we would like you to upload these externally. The pricing pro forma that has been given to you is where you put all your pricing information. There should be no pricing information in any part of the rest of your submission, so please make sure that you don't include anything relating to price in, for example, the award criteria response form. Everything relating to price should be in the pricing pro forma itself. Thank you. Next slide, please. The response itself, so each question that you put in is evaluated in its own right. They cover different aspects, and they help us to understand what you're going to do in terms of what we've asked you. The weightings show the importance for each question, and the page limits will give you an indication as to the amount of information, that we expect you to submit. The other point is that you should start drafting your response as soon as questioned, because if there is anything that you want to ask, as I mentioned earlier, there is a cut-off date, which is the end of next week, for asking any questions. So please make sure that you do start thinking about your response as early as possible. Questions might relate to anything at all, and as I said, there is nothing that's too silly or strange a question to ask. Please make sure that you do ask it. This includes relating to terms and conditions, because once the deadline's passed, we cannot accept any requests to change terms and conditions or submissions that are actually qualified once they've been put in. Thank you. Next slide, please. That's over to you now, Sylvia.
Thanks, Miriam. So we mentioned about social value and fair work first. So we've got this quote from Scottish Government about fair work and how this is a key priority, particularly transitioning out of COVID-19 and looking into a period of economic recovery and renewal. So we've got on this slide, we're showing the pillars of the fair work first. So we've got different aspects on here which you can see. The last two, the bottom two, are in an orange colour. They've been more recently introduced by Scottish Government around flexible and family-friendly working practices for all workers from day one of employment, and the opposition to the use of fire and rehire practices. So within the tender documents, you will see a guidance document which includes some information about this, and also some signposting to more information. And community benefits. So these are contractual requirements which deliver a wider social benefit in addition to the core purpose of the contract. So obviously quite a lot of what you'd actually be delivering within this contract, if you're successful onto the framework, will obviously be providing a level of benefit into the local community, but this is over and above that. So where the procurement is equal to or greater in value than £4 million, it's mandatory for us to include aspects around community benefits, but we also do include them at a lower value procurement as well, where proportionate and relevant. So we aim wherever possible for those community benefits to be delivered actually back into the High region, very much linking wherever possible to supporting High's priorities and objectives. So we're looking for what could assist communities, third sector organisations, etc., within the High region. And we've got a table here of examples. Again, there is a guidance document included within the tender documentation. And so it's divided up into various themes, such as recruitment and training. And so there's things that you can look at there around apprenticeships, work experience, etc. Educational, with some examples, environmental, supply chain, how may you use subcontractors, particularly ones within the high region. Are there opportunities for third sector and or supported businesses to be subcontractors? Community engagement and equality and diversity aspects. So within this particular procurement, we won't score the response that you provide back to the community benefit question. But obviously we will look at that, and anything that you submit in there you would be contractually obliged to deliver during the framework period. So there is an Excel spreadsheet that's provided for you to complete, and you can choose some drop-down options around those themes, etc. If you click on each of the theme, you'll see a little bit more information about some examples, and you can choose what you wish to offer, but you also have that ability to choose other. You'll also notice as well that we have a reference in our documents now to young persons guarantee, which can be supported, and that's included in both the recruitment and the training drop down area, and also in the educational area. So community benefits that you identify and you propose, they must relate to this tender and not be something that you perhaps have either already undertaken or undertaking for another organisation. I'll hand over to Marianne. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. What I'm going to do now is talk you through how your submission will actually be evaluated once we receive it. So we've already covered the SPD earlier on, which is evaluated as it's your response to the answers to these, so they're either pass, fail themselves. Then we go on to your award criteria response form, and the scoring methodology for the cybersecurity, which is the very first question, is shown there below. It's evaluated separately, as I mentioned, by our external expert, and as I've also mentioned, if anybody receives a fail on this, they're not evaluated further and they're actually excluded from the process. Next slide, please. The scoring methodology for the remainder of your quality response is shown here. It's actually standard 0 to 4 methodology that's used by a majority of public sector organisations. I'm not going to read it out for you because it's in the document and you can see there, but it's the 0 to 4 that's being used. Next slide, please. So the panel, when they evaluate your responses, will evaluate that independently. They don't actually consult with each other or anything. They're all done independently, and then we group together and review the submissions. It's an average score that's given. It's not, they don't have to do consensus scoring, and that meeting is facilitated by our team to make sure that everything that is being done in a compliant manner. The table there shows you how the factoring works, etc. Again, I'm not going to go through that because it's in the document and it should be self-explanatory. Next slide, please. In terms of price is scored by the procurement team, so the panel do not see that until after we've looked at the quality aspects, which is why we're asking you not to make sure that you don't put anything in terms of price into your tender submission other than in the pricing pro forma. You must use the pro forma that we've issued and also send it back in Excel. The evaluation itself is based on the total weighted day rate, because there's a percentage, a weighting that we've given to each of the grades roles there, and then that's the total weighted day rate that is used for evaluation purposes, with the rates that are being submitted actually applying to the framework itself. So these rates will be fixed for the duration of the framework and any potential extension to it. The scoring is again, shown there should be quite self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go through that. The one point to note is that because it's in Excel, the scores are automatically rounded up or down to 1 decimal point, so the scores might not exactly align when you see your scoring back. So it is a predefined formula that's used, and it's done by our team. Next slide, please. Again, this shows you how you would, a real worked example of how the scoring would work in terms of the bids. And again, it's just to show you as an example, so we don't need to explain it in huge detail. Next slide, and Sylvia, it's over to you.
Thanks, Mary-Ann. And so we've just got a few hints and tips which hopefully would be of assistance to you. Obviously read all of the tender documents. That can feel as if there's a lot of pages to try to work through. And obviously as well look at PCS to see if we've responded to clarification questions. So Mary-Ann mentioned about submitting those through the PCS portal. And we will be issuing our responses to those queries out. So please make sure you check that as well in good time before you're ready to submit your actual tender. Mary-Ann mentioned about the query and the deadline for the queries to be submitted by yourselves, and also when the tenders should be submitted. May be helpful to add those into your calendar, and any other team members who are helping you to complete your submission, and maybe add a reminder there, so that's not so that you're not too late for finalising and submitting your tender response. We've mentioned about using the anonymous question and answer option on PCS to raise those questions and clarify anything that you're not quite sure about. When you're reading through the documents, obviously think about any questions, go through each question that we're asking in the tender response form, and underline what the key points are to actually address, just to make sure that you're fully understanding what that question is and what we're looking and expecting back from yourselves as a response. Remember that each question is evaluated in its own right. So we will, make sure that your answer to that question is contained specifically within that relevant box within the tender response form. Please do not include web links, references or testimonials, general company literature or brochures or marketing material, unless a question has specifically asked you to do so. If you provide any of that information that we haven't asked for, it won't be reviewed and it won't be taken into account. For some of the questions you will see in the documentation, if we have published a page limit for a specific question, please make sure that you're taking that into account, particularly when you're working on your draft, and review your draft to make sure it is within that required maximum page limit. Anything submitted over and above that page limit is not for consideration, so we would have to exclude that. Something that can be helpful as well is ask somebody else within your organisation to maybe read your response, your drafted response, before you submit it, and see if they believe that it fully answers the question that we've asked, and if so, how would they score it using the scoring methodology table, the 0 to 4 that Mary-Ann's referred to. So that's a good opportunity for someone that hasn't been involved in maybe drafting that response to think, have you answered the question, have you answered it fully, and is there potential for you to add more or amend it in order to score the maximum that you can. Please be wary of cut and paste. Please make sure your response is tailored to our requirements and refers to High, and not maybe another organisation that you may have previously submitted a tender response for. We can only award scores on what you have stated in your proposal, so we can't take into account any existing knowledge of you. The evaluation is solely based upon what you've submitted in your tender documentation. And again, Mary-Ann's mentioned about allowing sufficient time for you to upload your tender response to the postbox on PCS. If you're late, your tender will be excluded from evaluation. We do not accept late tenders, and we don't accept email submissions of tenders whether they're on time or whether they're late before or after the deadline. So please don't leave that to the last minute. Marianne's mentioned we can't see who's submitting tenders before the deadline. We can't open them, we can't access them. So if you've got your tender response ready and you're happy with it, you can submit that days before the actual deadline. You don't need to wait until the last minute. You may wish to wait to have it ready and see if there are any more before the clarification deadline, when we have to respond back to any queries that have been submitted. You may wish to hold back until you've seen any of those queries in case that you need to make an amendment to your submission. But once you've done that, please submit as soon as you can. Whether you're successful or not with a place onto the framework, you will receive feedback from us, and hopefully that should be used constructively for you to help to improve your bid for either next time or if you're bidding for another organisation's opportunities as well. And then we've got various links which we're not going to go into the detail there, but obviously feel free to have a look and follow those links. There's some information there for a supply development programme. There's aspects there that relate to net zero if you're wanting to find out a bit more, or Fair Work Convention. I also mentioned about Young Persons Guarantee, and so if you're interested in submitting a community benefit link to that, please feel free to have a look at that website, and also Developing the Young Workforce, which you can find out about how you might then be able to actually support the Young Persons Guarantee in a bit more information for you. Any questions received after today, please submit those, as Marianne has said, through the questioning facility within PCS, and we will be responding to any queries received back through the PCS system. And thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us this morning.